Okay, so the cooler weather of the fall is now approaching, and I really want to do some blacksmithing. That being said, my anvil that I have to work with is just this piece of railroad track here. Okay, it's heavy. So today, I'm gonna try to turn this piece of railroad track into an actual anvil using pretty much just my angle grinder. Is it a thing that is possible? I don't know. But damn it, we're gonna find out together. So let's get down to it and level up this skill. If I haven't mentioned it before, you are gonna want a full respirator, safety glasses, and hearing protection setup. Because this job is both loud and messy, and there's just metal flying everywhere. For starters, I need to get this bad boy all measured up. I decided to make the face of my anvil 8 inches long with a 3-inch horn coming out of the front of it. So with my marks in place, I used a square to trace my line all around the track, just so I knew where I needed to cut off the excess. Then I busted out my angle grinder with a cutoff wheel and got to cutting. And this was some slow going. The starting cuts all felt like really good progress, but when I got to the kind of center of the piece of track, it slowed down a whole lot. And it was at this time actually that I decided to make my anvil a little bit longer. So originally I had made it so the face of it was gonna be 8 inches long and then a 3-inch horn, but I decided to just add an extra 4 inches onto it to make that bad boy 15 inches in total. Mostly because I wanted the bottom of it to have that kind of classic London anvil design where it kind of comes down like this. And just make the anvil generally heavier, which is what you want. You want as much mass as possible. So I cut these angles and made the rough shape as close as I could possibly go. And then just to finish off the sharp corners of my cuts, I used a hacksaw until it was close enough for me to bang it out with a hammer, which was just so satisfying to see. Okay, this should be the last little bit I need to cut. I had to move inside because it started to get dark and mosquitoes are coming out. Here's the rough shape of what my anvil's gonna look like. I still have to kind of round out the in here. This side's gonna be the horn. This side's where the little hardy hole is gonna be. But hot damn am I tired. So things I've learned in case you wanna try this. First, the grinding wheel works. I would recommend using a 6-inch grinder. I use a 4.5-inch grinder and it's just enough where it doesn't make it to the center on these little curves. It's just enough to piss me off. I started this at 1, it's about 6 now. I did have to run and get another grinding wheel because I had run out of grinding wheels. But yeah, that's roughly the kind of work you're looking into should you try to do this with a grinder. That being said, from here on out, we're just gonna be shaping out the little curves in here, flattening off the top, and making this round for the horn. So, before I start that, I'm gonna go have a shower and some dinner and, I don't know, watch some TV or something. I'll continue tomorrow. I'm excited with how it's coming up, but this is some hard work. Okay, day 2. I'm all showered and clean and ready to go. Just a quick note on why I've done this the way I've done this. Obviously, I want the front end, the horn, kind of sticking out past the base here because it's the horn. I need to work around and maybe bend things around it. For the back of it here, I want to put in one of those little hardy holes so that I can put other tools in there or use that hole to bend pieces of material. And as such, I wanted there to be this empty space underneath so things could actually go through that hole. So on the docket today, I'm gonna try to take some more material out of here to make this little transition smoother, then try to shape this horn and hopefully start getting to flattening this whole thing out. Let's see how we do. Also, for today's cut, I decided to switch over to this diamond blade. The hopes being that it's just gonna last a lot longer than those smaller disposable blades would. So the strategy here is to cut a bunch of little fingers into that rounded shape that I'm going for, and then cut into those fingers on an angle, removing as much material as possible with as few cuts as possible. And this bit went way faster than I thought it was going to go. And once the majority of that material was removed, I was able to switch to a grinder and start smoothing off those little ridges. And I was honestly able to get this really smooth. I was surprised how good that looked when it was done. Bolstered by my sexy success on this side of the anvil, I then followed suit on the opposite side, making all of my plunge cuts, then attacking them in angles, before finally smoothing it all out with a grinder. All right, so this is where I'm at right now. Look at that. Is at that phase where if you kind of squint and look sideways, it looks like an anvil. So I used those diamond blades at first to try to cut into these sides, but it turns out these disposable ones by Diablo, or they're called Diablo or whatever, those ones are the bomb. They were great. This would have been a much faster project if I started with those. This whole process here though only took me about an hour and a half to do. So now I'm gonna move on to making the horn and then trying to flatten off this whole top. Super excited with the way this is coming out though. So to get the rough shape of my horn, I just made straight lines coming from the center of the nose of the anvil down to where the horn should end. The plan is to cut away all this excess material before I start grinding. And again, using those Diablo blades made this really short work. And this is not like a paid sponsorship or anything, they just actually really work really well. So saying, Diablo, if you want to sponsor me, I'm here for it. Once I had that point shaped out, it was time to grind. And did I grind? I just kept going around the horn, slowly removing as much material as I could while maintaining that rounded, smooth shape. And I was beyond impressed with how this came out. Look at that! That's straight up an anvil horn. That looks dope. I'm losing daylight though, so I can't congratulate myself too hard. I gotta start flattening out the top. The problem with railroad track is it has kind of a rounded top to it, and getting it nice and flat is a huge struggle. This took me the most amount of time of anything from this project, and took me well into the night to finish up. All right, it is the end of day 3, and I couldn't be happier with the progress. Look at this. This is an anvil. At this point, if anybody saw this, they'd say this is an anvil. Okay, so my next step, I'm gonna drill the holes for this thing. So I'm gonna do the hardy hole in the back, and I'm gonna do some mounting holes down here. But again, look at it. That is so cool. I interrupt this program for a small PSA. So last night, I noticed that my eye was hurting a little bit. Upon further inspection, I saw this. Here, let me blow this up for you. See that little dot right there? That is a tiny shard of metal embedded in my eyeball. Needless to say, I went to the doctor to have it removed. You know how they remove tiny shards of metal from your eyeball? With a needle. The needle they stick in your eye. It's literally fighting fire with fire. It's a shard of metal to get a shard of metal. But that wasn't the worst part, actually. The worst part is the fact that once the metal gets in your eye, it immediately starts to rust. So I had a ring of rust around that tiny shard of metal that they had to get out. And to get that out, they use a tiny little, like a little drill thing with a pad on it that they buff it out of your eye. Needless to say, it wasn't a pleasurable experience. Make sure you have the correct eye protection. I was wearing these, which I thought was sufficient. I would highly recommend either like a face mask or goggles that actually seal against your skin if you're using an angle grinder or anything that throws material around that quickly. Look at it, look at my eye. Anyways, back to it. I decided to place my hardy hole about 2 inches from the end. I'm looking to make this hardy hole 3/4 inch square, and I am nervous about this. Mainly because of the difficulties that are inherent in making a square hole out of a round drill bit. Not only that, but I'm not 100% positive my drill bits are gonna wanna go through this, and I don't wanna just mess up the surface here. So my thought is to use smaller drill bits to drill out the corners, and then a larger drill bit to actually get the 3/4 hole in the middle. That'll give me a roughly square shape that I could then shape up with my file. Will it work? I have no idea. Well, let's find out. The drill bits I'm using for my corners are these 9/42 Cobalt bits made by Milwaukee. I was worried at first, but these didn't seem to have much trouble at all getting into the track. It was removing material in really good time, and with a judicious amount of oil, it wasn't overheating at all. It was going great, until it just wasn't. All right, I've been at it for a little while now, and I've hit a snag. Namely, my little drill bits here are dulling way more quickly than I thought they were going to. It started off really well, it was getting through, but that last little like 1/2 inch, it just continually dulls my bit. It could be that bit is just more hardened anyways, or that I might have hardened it while I was cutting through it by making it so hot. If I was hell-bent on having the hardy hole in there, I could either stick that in a fire and get it hot to anneal the metal again and make it soft so I can try to go through it, or maybe invest in a stronger drill press that just might not be high speed enough to get what I'm looking for. But in doing my research in how to cut a hardy hole into an anvil, most actual blacksmith's consensus is on a small anvil like this, don't even use one. Especially on like a railroad track anvil, they just say it's not worth the hassle. You could just as easily put the tools you would normally put in your hardy hole into like a metal vise that's next to it. So for the time being, I'm gonna turn that hole into what's called a Pritchel hole. This is a secondary round hole usually seen in an anvil, and it's usually used for like punching holes in things. To do that, I'm gonna widen it up a bit to be about 1/2 inch. I know that first bit can definitely get that far down, so that should be enough where if I needed to punch holes in things or to dent things in, that'll be plenty deep for me. All that being said, I actually only went about 1/4 inch deeper and then decided to stop. Now eventually, I'm probably gonna try to drill all the rest of the way through it, but I'm actually currently in a project where I need something with that kind of concave shape, And this is perfect, so I want to leave it like this just for now. Also, I have a friend who has like an actual like machine shop kind of drill press that I think is gonna do a better job on this anyway. So I'm gonna stop on that one there for now. So happy with where I'm at right now, I decided to go out and clean this thing up with a wire brush to get off as much rust as I was able to. Once it was all cleaned up, I taped off everywhere that I didn't want to get paint on it and tried to create really nice clean lines. Then I hit this bad boy with some black enamel just to give it a little bit of extra rust protection and to make it look slick. And I haven't seen how it comes out yet. We're gonna unwrap this gift together here. All right, let's see how this came out. Oh yeah. Oh man, this thing looks so slick. Oh, it's so clean looking. That black with the silver. I'm so happy right now. All these lines came out so smooth. The horn looks good. Everything came out so slick. Except for my hardy hole, obviously, but still, I am so excited about this. And totally doable. Like, I was able to get this done kind of half days every time I did it, but it took me about 3 days to get to this point right here. Now, a quick caveat. I did read on a lot of the blacksmith forum that people say if you have a railroad track, they actually recommend you using it this way, uncut. Like, you don't have to cut it into anvil shape. Use it standing up because that gives you the most mass underneath the anvil, and you really only need a striking surface as big as your hammer is because those are the only points that are making contact with the metal. That being said, having this horn here to help me shape things and this little face here, and I'm excited about this, and I'm sure there's somebody who's gonna rain in my parade in the comment section, and I don't care. I love it. Okay, before I move on, in my last episode, I 3D printed a leather stamp. And I said I would pick at random out of the people in the comment section who left me a hashtag stamp and make them like a keychain with it or something. So I have our 5 names written on a Home Depot receipt. You won something, so just deal with it. So our winners are Jay in the Bay, hey Jay in the Bay, Diego Bob, Maggie Smith, Andre Brabin, hey Andre, and Chris Fields. Make sure you reach out to me, send me where I can be sending those things. You can either send it to my Discord or IM me on Instagram. Both are in the description below. And I will make you things and I will send them to you. Thank you for playing. Now, I get to make really cool things on this show, and the only way I'm able to do that is because of my Patreon members. So let me give a shout out to all my Patreon members first and foremost, but also to my very newest high-tier Patreon member, Priest of High Five. Priest of High Five, thank you so much for helping me be able to do all this weird stuff for you. I really enjoy it, so thank you so much. Now, not only do I get to do cool stuff, but the people over on my Discord have just been crushing it with the things they've been making lately. Check out all this stuff. I love being able to show off the things you guys make on this show, and that community over in the Discord is amazing anyways for doing this kind of stuff and helping each other through projects. If you want your stuff to be featured on there, definitely jump onto the Discord, see what's going on, engage in conversation, and drop your projects in there. I'd love to see what you're doing. And of course, if there's anything in particular you'd love to see on the show, why don't you leave it in the comment section below and maybe I'll add it to the list. Alright, I should get going though. I now have this little anvil and I'm like desperate to use it. In the meantime though, keep leveling up, you. Thank you for sticking around to the end screen. YouTube algorithm loves it when you do. They also love it when you like and subscribe to my channel, so if you enjoyed what you saw here, why don't you do that? Finally, why don't you give one of these videos down here a look? I think you'd like both of them, really.